Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, members, esteemed speakers, dear guests, I would also like to welcome you here to the first, and certainly not the last, Democracy Congress of our party. We are often accused in politics and the media that we wanted to unwind democracy in our country. No, if we hold a Congress here today and tomorrow, which is dedicated to democracy, then it is about thematizing the emergence of this democracy in today's Germany. An emergence and distortion of democracy by those people who like to speak of our democracy and thus become self-aware. They mean they would have bought state and democracy here in this country, not to say bought it. And yes, the old parties and their filth, they have plundered this republic and are heading for an iceberg. Without consideration for losses, without the will to take the situation of our country into account and to act. Because they have forgotten that the governments, the MPs in the European Parliament, Bundestag and Landtag, that we are all employees of the sovereignty, namely employees of the people, of the voters. And now, after decades of changing trees, the game of Union, SPD, FDP, and Greens, and the so-called left is long gone from the party. Now, these voters finally see a real alternative to this charade, an alternative for Germany. They see that we look at the governments on their behalf, offer good options for action. And that's why the people choose us. From election to election, the demand increases. Because they see that the party line is under a blanket, cuts of dirt around the well-being of the people. And that's why these full officials and their henchmen are in panic. There is an alternative to them. And that's why they are now trying with all means to defend their position against the food thieves. They are now talking about a defensive democracy, but only mean their own, their close-knit democracy. And so, from a legitimate criticism of their policy in the reports of the constitutional protection, a democratic hostile delegitimization of the state, a rubber term. It does not serve to protect the Constitution, but to protect the rulers from their own people. And with that, we are in the middle of the topic. We have to put democracy, the rule of the people, in many, first of all, in their rights, enforce it. Because we are experiencing state attacks against citizens, but also because of delicts of opinion to an extent that would have been unthinkable a few years ago. House searches for critical social media posts, prosecution for political satire or unkind expression of opinion. Yes, even EU sanctions against critical journalists and experts who existentially threaten you and your families. This is not the practice of a self-confident liberal democracy. This is the behavior of an ensured functional elite. This is the mentality of people who sit in the bunker, of people who are in a final battle. The argument is feared and is based on repression. But when the state begins to punish the thinking of its citizens instead of guaranteeing their constitutional rights to its citizens, then freedom is actually in danger. Because democracy becomes, in a pun, an etiquette on a bottle that only contains lukewarm air. Unfortunately, this development is promoted by a media landscape that betrays its actual task. Instead of making relations open, instead of controlling the powerful, the public legal media, financed by the forced contributions of the citizens, have now turned into educational and teaching institutions. Instead of expanding the corridor for debates, you narrow it down to the narrow path of the allowed and approved. Instead of allowing controversial positions, you exclude them, although you only grow in contradiction. If you are looking for alternative information and debate channels, you are exposed to bureaucratic thumbscrews. The reformed media state contract does not serve the diversity, but creates exactly these new levers to put unpopular media platforms under the pretext of supervision or even silence them. The way to do this was long. It began at the latest in 2017 with the network enforcement law of Heiko Maas in the proven coalition of the Union and the SPD. But the filigree censorship law of our days began and does not end at the German borders. The EU is building a transnational censorship architecture under the label of the Digital Services Act, DSA. It has been looking for the same thing in history since 1945. What happens there is a privatization, a deposition of censorship. Large online platforms are forced to delete content by coercion of draconian punishments. But no independent judges decide what should be disinformation or hate speech. This is done by so-called NGOs, which are installed as trustworthy indicators. And there an unholy alliance is revealed for which the word civil society has become a chic camouflage term. Allegedly, non-governmental organizations are supported by the state, a mixture of ideological zeal and lucrative government order. These NGOs are supposed to brand unwanted statements of opinion as hate or disinformation, and then they have to delete the tech companies. How recklessly this machinery has long been acting shows acute and alarming precedent cases. For example, the fate of the Swiss military analyst and former UN employee Jacques Beau. He has analyzed geopolitical conflicts like the Ukrainian war differently than desired. That is why the EU put him on a list of sanctions in 2025. Without a trial, without a hearing, his bank accounts were frozen, his freedom of travel was drastically cut. Or let's take the fate of the left-wing Berlin journalist Hüseyin Doğru. The EU Council of 2025 also put him on the list of sanctions as a measure against Russia's destabilizing activities. In his case, German authorities also blocked the accounts of his wife and mother. He is not allowed to work or accept donations, has problems with rent, food, and insurance. Such measures are the final break with the fundamental principles of the rule of law. And if we no longer work with arguments, but with economic destruction, with the withdrawal of civil rights, then we are on the way to total repression. Not only these two cases concern everything. It increasingly affects publicists, lawyers, satirists, free spirits, who should be silenced by account canceling and social isolation. We say clearly, this must end. Ladies and gentlemen, this spirit of exclusion does not stop even in front of the gates of Parliament. The AfD party experiences here in this Bundestag how the rights of the opposition are cut every day. We are denied seats in Parliament. We are denied vice presidential posts, and parliamentary control rights are cut. Or the charade about our number of factions as an example. Who wants to silence the opposition in Parliament does not attack us as a party. He attacks the millions of citizens who have given us their trust. Democracy lives from change, from the alternative, from the fight in committees and in the plenary. Anyone who is afraid of this fight and uses business order tricks shows only one thing: naked fear of a better argument. Dear guests, our country needs a political turnaround. And this turnaround begins in the head. It begins with the courage to speak out the truth, unbent, clear, and without scissors in the head. We, as Alternative for Germany, are rock solid to Article 5 of our basic law. Everyone has the right to express their opinion in word, writing, and picture-free, and to spread. A censorship does not take place. We will not be intimidated, not by authority-bound authorities, not by Brussels censorship commissars, and not by the medias. This Democracy Congress is a strong signal of the uprising. We bring the experts, we bring the brave and the citizens together to defend freedom of speech. Let us fight together for Germany to become a country of freedom of spirit, of fruitful debate, and of living democracy. Thank you very much.